Harry Harris grew up surrounded by jazz, and he played jazz at the highest level. And I want you to listen to what he says in this clip.
Look here, let me tell you. Never in my life, I never heard of anything about Dorian or Mixolydian or Lydian. I ain't heard nothing, but I learned how to play jazz. Right. So now why they come up with that nonsense? The reason they came up with that is because they suddenly said, oh, we can make some money off this. Yeah, but if we're going to make money off it, we got to have something to show. We got to, what we going to teach them? We can teach them the modes. So everybody know about, I know all of you know about the Dorian and the Mixolydian. I know nothing about that nonsense. I ain't never heard of it in my life.
Meanwhile, today I see musicians who can explain modes, chord extensions, alterations, the Phrygian dominant, upper structures, negative harmony, and a whole bunch of things, and yet they can hardly play simple jazz tunes in time, or even to simply play a song without a lead sheet. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you why this obsession with information might actually be slowing you down, and I'm going to show you what to do if you really want to transform your playing. So, let's never lose sight of the fact that jazz is something that we do. It's a sound, it's a language, and it's a process. At its core, jazz is simply about doing specific things in a very specific way. But before we go any further, if you want a head start in jazz and you want to start playing immediately, simply comment ebook and I will send you my free ebook, 10 Steps to Become a Better Jazz Musician. It will help you to focus on the things that actually improve your playing. So it's not just going to be information. If you follow the steps, it will actually lead to transformation. So let's start with the big problem. So adults often believe, well, I need to fully understand everything in order for me to actually use it. In other words, I don't just want to know the what, I need to know the why. And honestly, while there's an element of truth to this, which obviously is why it makes sense for a lot of people to ask this, it's not entirely accurate. And this belief could actually slow down your progress in jazz, because jazz is not primarily an intellectual activity, it's really a musical language. Imagine somebody saying, I cannot learn English, until I fully understand what nouns, adjectives, adverbs, pronouns, or even prefixes are. I mean, that would just be ridiculous, right? Or what if a baby said, well, how am I supposed to learn how to walk when I don't understand which bone connects to which and how my whole body functions? In fact, I don't even understand what should the exact distance be that my foot has to be up from the ground, I don't even know how to balance. Again, that would be quite ridiculous, wouldn't it? So you basically learn how to walk by walking, and you learn how to speak by speaking, and likewise you learn how to play jazz by playing jazz. So many beginner students, they like to spend almost the entire lesson just talking and asking questions. Well, how come this voicing for my C major 7 doesn't have a major 7th in it? Or they'll say, oh, so you mean when I'm playing a bossa nova, that chord has to come in on the end of beat 2 or 3 or whatever. And meanwhile, those who simply copy and paste what I show them, or even what they hear from a recording, those guys get a jazz sound almost immediately and they start to make progress. I'm a strong advocate for play first, and then you can understand these things later. Now, let me be very clear on something before you all come to my house to attack me. Theory is not bad at all. Theory can actually help us to organize information, and it can open, it can enlighten us in certain areas, so we wouldn't really know certain things unless we actually knew maybe the theory behind them, and that's true. The unfortunate thing is jazz education sometimes makes theory feel like the music itself, and that can be quite dangerous. because many theoretical concepts were actually created after the music had already existed. And it's also important to know that a lot of jazz theory was invented by academics who were trying to explain what jazz musicians were actually doing. So, many of those explanations, by the way, are actually quite debatable. So you'll hear one person say this thing and then another person saying, no. What do you mean modes? We're not talking about that. So even theory is up for debate. So everyone, most people have different words actually for different things. One of the things I enjoy doing is actually watching some masterclasses or workshops by great jazz musicians. And one thing I remember very clearly was a Korea workshop that I watched sometime. And students were asking some of these very deeply theoretical questions, and using all this advanced terminology. And what I found interesting was Chick was actually genuinely confused about what some of these guys were talking about. And not because he wasn't an educated musician himself. It was simply because Chick, I believe, he learned music primarily through sound. So he learned through playing, by listening, and through interacting. And he was just a believer of being an apprentice. So if you want to play like somebody, well, go and play with that person or go and listen to that person. So you don't necessarily become a good musician through memorizing terminology and theory. Jazz is something that we do. And then what's interesting when you hear Barry's talking about growing up, and then he says he never heard anyone talk about Dorian or mixolydian or modal theory. It's not only Barry Harris that I've heard say this, by the way, especially the guys from the old school. Basically what they did is these guys learned tunes. They learned about harmony, so chords, chord progressions. They learned about movement, how to move from one chord to another, how to get a jazz sound. They learned about phrasing and articulation, syncopation. They learned jazz by simply doing jazz. So if you're feeling confused or overwhelmed by theory, and if you really just want to focus on the actual foundations that make people sound good in jazz, or for them to even sound like they're playing jazz, well, then simply type the word fundamentals in the comments, and I'm going to send you a link to my Jazz Piano Fundamentals course, where you will learn the core things that jazz musicians should really focus on if they want to make real progress and experience transformation in their playing. Remember, this is not an information game. It's not about how much information you've got. It's really about how much transformation you're experiencing in your playing. I'll tell you just one very interesting thing. So I have absolutely no idea how electricity works. None. So I couldn't explain to you, even if you paid me. I cannot tell you about circuits or power stations or engineering. But I do know that if I hit the switch, the lights come on. And as simple as that sounds, that's really how the great jazz musicians learned jazz. So they discovered, so when I do this, then it sounds like jazz. Oh, when I add this extra note, is that what happens? So I'd really want to encourage you, before I go any further, to really just explore jazz. Don't try and overthink and over-understand everything. Just figure out the things that work, and then what you have to do, just like the greats, is to repeat this several times, thousands of times, and then before you know it, you start speaking the language of jazz fluently. So I'm going to give you what I believe you really, really need to focus on. So you've got to focus on playing in time. You've got to focus on jazz chord progressions. You've got to focus on harmonic formula. You want to focus on how tunes are actually put together. So for instance, in fact, I'm going to put a link here. Just check out how I analyze a Charlie Parker tune called Yardbird Suite. So there's a link to that video somewhere here. You want to make sure that you learn things like rhythm. You want to make sure that you accumulate vocabulary. You want to become good at imitating the people that you're listening to, because this is how you really learn the vocabulary. So this whole game is not really about theoretical perfection. I notice some people, particularly on YouTube, they'll come and want to criticize theory. Oh no, it's this. Oh no, pivoting means this. No, Oscar Peterson says this, and then you have all these futile debates. Because we're really not here to just debate jazz. We're really here to learn how to play. So jazz, again, is something that we do. And it's important to know that we learn it from listening, from copying and imitating and experimenting, and also repetition, and very important, with others. If you think about some of the great musicians, right, like Erroll Garner, for instance, this man could not read a single note of music. Now, can you imagine you go back in time and you were asking, oh, Erroll, were you thinking about the Phrygian dominant over there, or were you actually using the altered dominant approach, He's probably going to look at you like you fell from some other planet, like what on earth are you talking about? So he's probably doing those things, but he's not thinking about those things. And Barry Harris often spoke about how Thelonious Monk had no idea what you'd be talking about if you said to him, play a half diminished chord. So Barry would say, no, that's D half diminished. And Monk would be like, oh, are you talking about an F minor chord with the sixth in the bass? Right? So Monk obviously had his own theory about that same chord. So some people will say this is D half diminished. Some people will say it's a D minor 7 flat 5. Monk would say it's an F minor with the sixth in the bass. And of all the people, I'm actually tend to want to agree with Monk more than anyone else, because when you play this chord, you really want to be thinking about an F minor 6 scale. See, that works perfectly for me there. So I'm thinking of an F minor. In fact, sorry. And then I can play the chords from that scale. So D half diminished doesn't really explain this, but look at Monk's theory. So it's not really about terminology, it's about how useful is this information to you. So when I think about Garner and Monk, theory, whatever, but their playing was really full of feel and personality. It was original. In fact, they were even writing their own compositions. They swung very heavily. Their music was full of beauty and also full of storytelling. And that's really the most important thing. So it's way more important than theoretical terms. So if you want the things that actually transform your playing and theory that you can actually use in a practical way, because sometimes there's this thing that I like to call practical theory. So yes, you've got the biblical theory, which you'll find in books, but there's some practical theory which helps you to play immediately. Then if that's what you want, then you should absolutely look at my Jazz Piano Fundamentals course, because I will focus on the important things like your chord progression. So let's say, for instance, your 2-5-1, right? Harmonic formulas. Another chord progression, an important one, and I'll probably show you this one, is turnarounds. I'm going to remember to play turnarounds for you just now and to show you. But in the Jazz Piano Fundamentals course, I'm also focusing on how tunes are put together so that you don't see each song as a completely new thing. And we'll take just a few songs and play them through multiple keys, because this will help you to really understand the language of jazz. And it's also going to help you to become fluent at speaking that language. I really focus on playing in time, because again, extremely important, right? You've got whatever you're playing, you want to make sure that you're playing in time. So let's talk about those turnarounds. So a turnaround is simply a 1-6-2-5 progression. So if I'm to play this, let's say in the key of A flat, there's chord 1, there's chord 6, there's chord 2, and there's chord 5. Okay. So 1, 6, 2, 5. You find this turnaround in so many jazz standards. So instead of thinking of your chords as A flat major 7, F minor 7, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, that's a lot of information. That's simply a formula, a chord progression known as the turnaround. And sometimes there are variations to this. So I might, on my 6th chord, I might play this as a dominant. I could do that. Okay. Sometimes instead of playing chord 1, I might play chord 3. So I'm thinking of songs already like Blue Moon, you saw me standing alone, 1, 6, 2, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my own. So what's interesting, I'm laughing and smiling because I'm already feeling for my voice this is too low. So instead of saying let me relearn Blue Moon, what I'm simply going to say is let me go to a key that's higher and play a turnaround, and I've got my Blue Moon. What if I tried, let me try key of D flat. Blue moon, you saw me standing, that's way better. That's a turnaround. Without a dream in my, without a love of my own. 1, 6, 2, 5. Blue moon. There, you see, I can play it in any key. I could have been playing it in D. Blue moon, you saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my own. So I can do that, not because, I know how to play Blue Moon in multiple keys. No, I know that Blue Moon is a turnaround, and therefore I can do that. And not only do I know that this turnaround appears in multiple songs. So the song could have been Someday when I'm awfully low. Let me change. 3. When the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you and the way you look tonight. That's a turnaround. 1, 6, 2, 5. Sometimes 3, 6, 2, 5. Sometimes I just make my 6th chord dominant 7. So I know different ways to play my turnaround. And then when I'm playing a song like Misty, I showed Misty in a couple of my previous videos. It might have been the last video. Some people will think of Misty as, it's in the key of E flat. But as I showed you in the previous video, that could have been in any key. I could have been in the key of E. Turn around right here. 1 goes to 6, then to 2, then to 5. That's a turnaround again. Turn around. I could have been doing this in the key of F sharp. These are just other chord progressions. Again, I cover them in the Jazz Piano Fundamentals course, but again, it's just showing you. Turn around. 1, 6, 2, 5. There's 2. There's a turnaround. 3, 6, 2, 5. And the reason I can even do things like what I've done there at the end, these are simply inversions. Something that people take for granted. A basic building block of music, a fundamental. We cover this in the Jazz Piano Fundamentals course. However, if you've already got your fundamentals, so let's say, oh, you know how to play songs in multiple keys, you know all the chord progressions and all these harmonic formulas that Owen's talking about, you can play your inversions, you can even voice your chords, you know about rhythm, then what you should do is you should consider looking at the Jazz Piano Lab, because here we really focus on becoming fluent. So in fundamentals, you're learning the what, learning how to think like a jazz musician, but in the Jazz Piano Lab, you are now learning how to become fluent at that language. So you've learned the words, maybe a few sentences and phrases. Now you're speaking sentences, you're actually practicing so that you can have conversations, and you want to practice these things to a point where they can appear in your playing, but more on a subconscious level. So when you're learning your fundamentals, you are really thinking about everything, whether it's autumn leaves or fly me to the moon. You're thinking 6. So you're actually saying it out loud. Fly me to the, you might pause and be like, 2. What's 2 in the key of C? Moon. And let me, 5. What's 5? 5. I'm in the key of C. Play among the, 1. Okay, in the lab, Jazz Piano Lab, we're now becoming fluent. So there's exercises that now enable you to play the same thing. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Or fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Or fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Okay, I hope I'm singing the right words. But anyway, you get the idea. All right, so you're now playing with fluency, and you can take things from one key into another, and you can see the connections between different songs. That's how we become fluent at the language of jazz. And the next step, once you've done all these things, so you've built from the foundation, you've gone into the lab, the next thing is now, because you've got that solid foundation, you can start improvising or learning how to improvise over the chord changes. And you're not thinking of them as isolated little things. You can actually see how they work. You've now got a number of songs and a number of voicings, and all this knowledge about how songs actually work, so you can compose in real time, so that you're learning compositional skills, because improvising is really just composing in the moment. All right, so hopefully we get the message. Barry Harris didn't become Barry Harris because he memorized modes. He simply became Barry Harris because he deeply internalized the sound and the language of jazz. He actually did it. So knowing this should really, I'm hoping, free up a lot of people, because maybe the thing that's holding you back is not that you don't have enough information. It could actually be that you've got too much information but too little playing. Right, so my encouragement, again, I have a list of people you could start listening to in my free ebook, which is available for download. Simply comment ebook and you can get that. And I would recommend you listen to those musicians who I believe are within reach. You're welcome to choose your own, by the way. Again, not everything is a debate. No, this guy is easier than the one you're suggesting, Owen. We don't need to go there, right? Just find whoever is within reach. So these are my suggestions. It's worked for me and for hundreds of other students of mine. So feel free to try that or your own. That's absolutely fine. So listen, imitate, and just do it. That's what Nike says, right? Before you know it, you become fluent and you start speaking the language of jazz. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, as is the case, because YouTube tells me about 75% of people that watch my videos not subscribed, please subscribe, because that will just help this channel to grow and to do well on YouTube. Please do subscribe, and I hope you check out the courses as well if you want to take your playing to the next level. Practice, do it. It won't help to just listen or argue and debate. What will actually help is sit at your instrument and try these things out, and your playing will be transformed. I can guarantee you that if you put in the work. So I hope to see you guys in the next video.